as we talk about progress being made in the fight against inflation, should we just be bracing ourselves for progress that is slowing or progress that could potentially reverse?
Well, if you look at most forecasts, in fact, I'm having trouble thinking of one that doesn't go in this direction. They all show that the trend is still our friend. But as Daniel was saying, sometimes that road can be a little bumpy month to month. There were potentially some anomalous factors in January and February. But even there, we saw, for example, with the PPI year over year, that's a 1.6% read. Go back a year, that number was over 5%. Go back to 22, it was 10%. So over the longer term, we have a clear deceleration, and we believe that the structure is in place for that to continue. If you think about where we see the job market continuing to percolate but cooling some, where GDP continues to grow at a solid rate but cooling some, all of that seems consistent with easing pressures.
Okay, so Jared, as you talk about the idea that the road is bumpy, sure, there's also the question, though, of where the road ends. In the president's own budget that he put out on Monday, it sees CPI at an average of 2.9% in 2024. There's a difference between 2.9% and 2%. Is a 2% inflation target still realistic, or is the world just different now?
Well, this gets into Federal Reserve policy that I will assiduously avoid. We do have, I'm not exactly sure where it shows up in the budget tables, but we do have forecasts of the PCE, the Personal Consumer Expenditure Deflator, which is the one the Fed, of course, will pay more attention to. And there, if you look at the core, once again, I see forecasts, including the Fed's own, which is probably the most germane, that reinforce the comments I was making earlier on a steady glide path down to numbers that are closer to their target. Now, exactly how that proceeds and how they process that in their monetary policy transmission mechanism brain, that's up to them.
Well, as we talk about the glide path, it gets us to this kind of landing analogy, right, Jared? Right now, a lot of people say this feels very much like a soft landing, but I have to ask you if it may feel soft now because we haven't actually touched down yet. Have we really landed at all? When will we land? And how can we be so confident that that landing won't be rough?
Well, I think there are two important points to respond to that. The first is that it was widely believed, and you at Bloomberg were very much part of this consensus, that we would be in a pretty deep recession about now. And I saw probabilities that were, north of 90% that would be the case. And of course, that's no longer the dominant forecast by a long shot. So to the extent that people have reset their expectations to an ongoing recovery versus a recession, I do think that's baked in the cake in a very positive way for the economy. But all of this, point two, all of this is a very, very macro, very speculative. Here at the White House, we just really have to be concerned about the kinds of pressures that families like the one this president grew up in, the middle-class working families, face. Now, they've got a great job market at their back, and that's hugely important to them, but they're also still facing high costs. And therefore, our work must be to bring those costs down. And whether it's prescription drugs, whether it's health coverage, whether it's insulin, whether it's broadband, especially in rural areas, whether it is the cost of housing, childcare, all of these measures, many of which are in our budget, are efforts to significantly reduce costs. Junk fees, that's a whole other area of our work. So that's where we have to focus, helping people with lower costs today.
Well, you mentioned all those objectives that are outlined in the budget, but Mr. Chair, you know as well as I do that the budget's one thing, reality is something different. What's in the budget does not always become real in many senses. So what tools do you have left that the White House can do immediately that's not going to require congressional sign-off?
Well, I will speak to that, but let me talk about what's real in that list that I ticked off. So what's real is $35 on insulin, where seniors were paying hundreds before. What's real is after decades of other administrations trying to fight and win against Big Pharma, this president did so. So lower prescription drug costs, that's real. That's in the mix. Standing up domestic semiconductor industry, real. Standing up domestic electric vehicle industries, batteries, that's all real. Clean energy production. This is legislation that's passed. So what else can we do?
Okay.
Well, we're actively putting downward pressure on junk fees, as I mentioned. And one thing that's new, to get to your question, is title insurance. That's something the president talked about in the State of the Union as an area where a lot of people are paying a lot more than they should, particularly on refis. And he pulled that out and has continuously done so in his further comments about helping in the housing sector. That's something we believe we can do on our own.
Well, the president, of course, also has made a lot of comments about helping U.S. workers, specifically union workers. And so I'd like to end, Jared, thank you again for being so generous with your time this evening. On the U.S. steel deal that the president has now come out against, he essentially said it should stay in American hands, that he pledged to have the backs of steel workers, and he is following through on that, I suppose. What is the concern, though, about the economic ramifications a deal like this could have for those workers? Why does this necessarily have to potentially be a bad thing?
Well, I think that's a good question for the steelworkers themselves. The president has their back. They've certainly been outspoken about this. And I think his statement very much reflects his alignment with that group of very important American workers in a critical American industry.